Welcome, and with me in the studio now is Raymond Ndlovu. He is the CEO of Ndlovu Financial Innovation. Raymond, we want to chat about where we are as we stand now and what we're likely to expect in the future. But before we get there, what exactly is Ndlovu? How does it work, and how is it involved in the?
Thanks very much. Ndlovu is a 5.5-year-old institutional stockbroking firm. Essentially, we see ourselves as an entrepreneurial endeavor that's involved in the space of black economic enablement. We have been...
How is that different to empowerment?
Well, empowerment has certain connotations which I think have gone down not so well in the last number of years, which really talks more to constructing things around ownership solely. Enablement talks to a much broader aspect of involving people in terms of skills development, involving the business in social development initiatives, and it looks at BEE as a form of achieving a certain social outcome in the long run. And we'd like to see ourselves very much as a business that is facilitating us that participation in a broader sense.
If we look at BEE and how it's changed over the last decade, clearly the first deal very much centered around ownership, very much a select few individuals that seemed to be benefiting. Then if we fast forward to March this year, we saw the Central BEE deal, for example, much more broad-based. Can a deal be too broad-based?
In certain instances it can, depending on what you're looking to achieve from that particular deal. One has got to obviously look at the intricacies and the peculiarities of the particular sector, what that particular venture is looking to achieve by the involvement of black partners. And in certain instances, certain industries require a particular skill set which is only available in a limited number of hands. And one's got to be very particular about looking at that. You can't paint everything with the same brush. But having said that, I think there's been quite a lot of progress. I think the Central BEE deal in particular is an extremely innovative deal. It brings together a lot more by way of depth and scope of people that will be involved. And certainly it has far-reaching effects in terms of secondary effects on black economic enablement, as I call it.
If we look at, say, for example, the Assange share scheme that the National Empowerment Fund is doing, are we likely to see more of those sorts of schemes in partnership almost with a slightly smaller, slightly more focused deal that brings in skills that are necessary for the business to go forward?
Certainly, because I think what is starting to happen is rather than have what I would call the silent majority that have been called upon to participate just for the sake of the numbers, one has got to start asking what else could be done in a secondary and tertiary aspect to involve some of the players and participants in either supplying down the line or some kind of community spin-off by the people that are actually being invited to participate in those ventures. So as the deals progress, there's going to be a likelihood for a greater focus to look at not just the numbers of people, but the quality of interaction between the actors in that particular structure.
How much, in terms of the change in design of the BEE deal, has got to do with what the intended outcomes are? If one is just to bolster your black ownership or bolster the participation, does that change it if one's looking forward to trying to uplift the community or get specific skills in or train people for certain skills?
Well, you see, that's the danger in looking purely at the ownership aspect, because it really talks to capital formation. And capital formation means that you're assuming that in the first place the participants that you're introducing to a venture have got capital of their own to put down. In most instances that isn't the case. And the problem you have is effectively the structures that are employed to facilitate these transactions. The advisors and financiers actually end up creaming a lot of the upside, essentially because the people that have been brought along haven't had their own capital to put in. Therefore, I applaud very much the broad-based aspect of it, because it starts to look at ownership purely as one of the pillars of a much more broader framework to achieve certain outcomes in the long run.
What sort of impact would interest rates have then? Obviously, we've seen a massive increase in interest rate levels over the last two and a bit years. How does that change the thinking then? Because obviously then not as easy to get funding, and it costs a lot more to get the growth one needs to make a deal viable in the old structure.
Absolutely. I think it's in a way sobers people up. The long-term intention of ensuring that empowerment takes place is to ensure that fundamentally it's supported by a sound business case. And in the past, with frothy markets, with high valuations, it's very easy to get carried away with the potential quick upside. What we really need to be looking at is, in the long run, how many people, black people, are involved in the mainstream of the economy, and underpinning that should be their involvement in ownership in businesses that are growing, that are competitive, that in the long run can actually create new entrepreneurs that are in fact able to seed their own businesses and those of others. That will be when we've really achieved long-term success in the space of BEE.
If we look at the BEE codes of good practice, they're pretty much finalized now. There are one or two deadlines that need to be worked through, as I think predominantly with regards to the financial sector charter.
Yes.
Is it doing what it's intended to do? What exactly do the codes want to see happen in the future?
Well, the codes want to see a much broader social development framework. I think one must really applaud. South Africans are very innovative, and in the sense that we've managed to actually create a very clear framework for what we want to achieve as a social development outcome. They're a very good thing. What the difficulty comes in is the fact that with particular sectors there are specific constraints and guidelines that determine what can be achieved. And in the case of the financial sector charter, as a case in point, the difficulty comes in the fact that the banks and other participants had already achieved and agreed to certain focused outcomes, which in their sort of mindset was already quite a remarkable achievement. And so the Act is really looking to create a much broader, safer framework, which everyone can actually predictably say that they can work within.
Have we got there?
No. BEE is a process. It's a laudable process, but certainly we are very far from achieving lamentable, sort of, or at least agreeable targets from a social development standpoint.
Lamentable targets.
Yeah, no, it's not lamentable that we're looking for, but I think we still got a long way to go, but immense progress has been made, and we should stop sometimes and take stock of the great progress that has been made. There have been significant changes across the landscape. Much still needs to be done. There are many challenges. But there's much that's been achieved so far.
What does need to be done? What should we be looking to do over the next 2-3 years? And is there an end in sight almost, or is it something that we're going to be with for a very long time?
That's an open-ended question, because clearly at some stage we need to have BEE working to a finite point, because otherwise we don't have a normalized society. This is really a tool which is meant to achieve certain outcomes because of our historical legacy. And for BEE to be successful, it's got to have a finite end to it. But having said that, I think we need to change our mindset more to focus more on entrepreneurship, skills development, uplifting people who don't have necessarily the means by which to enter the mainstream of the economy. And I think the mindset really needs to focus away from the glamorous boardroom deals and focus more towards schools, teaching kids how to think about how they're going to create jobs as opposed to look for them when they're finished with their formal part of their education.
I suppose it comes down once again to skills, and if you can skill the children in financial management, understanding how to make money work for them, then it's probably where you want to start immediately.
Absolutely. So, we should be seeing the achievement of BEE through the eyes of a pipeline, and I think the earlier the better. We shouldn't really just only be focusing on the glamour of the deals. There is a lot that can be done to intervene at a very early age to include people who otherwise would be thinking differently about how to make themselves economically active.
And then very quickly to close off with, is there enough being done in terms of skills transfer at this stage?
In my view, not enough. There are many barriers, I think, particularly when you look at the financial sector, which I can speak more about, is that I think there are many invisible barriers to entry by black people into the financial sector. And it starts with the value chain. And one's got to actually ask, at the end of the day, the consumer that is buying financial services, are they asking enough of their service provider to ensure that certain things happen? And in certain instances, in fact, are they cooperating to ensure that there is space created for new entrants such as ourselves?
Raymond Ndlovu is the CEO of NOAA Financial Innovation. That's all from Powerline in association with MoneyWeb. We're crossing now to CNBC US for US Squawk Box. CNBC Africa back at 4 p.m. Central African Time with Regional Roundup.